Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. Dogabot333, and welcome back to Hearts Mind for the New Order as Brasida. And last time we were here together, we started working on a fair bit of education reform. Did a lot of internal education reform. We'll just have to finish up later on the school expansion. Before we get to that, we're working on our infrastructure. We're going to see if we can build a dam along the Itaipu. I'm probably making some ears bleed right now. I apologize. I'm very, very American. I don't know. I barely know how to speak English, let's be real. So, but I notice over the break we have another little project, the Rio-Sao Paulo line, high-speed rail corridor between Brazil's largest metropolises, employing the latest in Japanese technology. It promises to enable travel between the urban centers for an unprecedented speed, a boon for business and leisure alike. Look at that. So we've upped the max we can get here. These are going to take a fair while to actually get going. We can only invest 10 production units into this. Once the healthcare system figures itself out, which I think is going to get there soon. Expand to rural areas. Soon we'll get national coverage, it looks like. It's going to be about a year for that, but once we get there, it'll be very, very nice. Alright, so let's go. We did Mato Grosso already, right? I think we did Para as well. Yeah, we did Para. So let's go with Goiás. Yeah, let's do Goiás. Just a few decades ago, Goiás was a decrepit backwater. Land was concentrated into a handful of hopelessly inefficient latifundios. There were scarcely even dirt paths to connect to the rest of Brazil, and no industry was present besides the cottage industry variety. Excuse me. But in 1932, Vargas launched his march to the west, promising to bring modernity to the deep interior. The core of his plan was Guiana, a new capital for Goiás, wherein public parks would constitute a third of its space. Most immediately after its 37 inauguration, Guiana became a hub for agribusiness, surpassing its designers' most optimistic predictions. It tripled in population from 1950 to 1960, in part bolstered by the construction of Brasilia. Today, Guiana made fertilizer, farm equipment, and vegetable oil feeds the breadbasket, which in turn feeds a nation. Here we go. Next up, we got Brasilia, the federal district. Modern and open, Brasilia is an edge, a city of broad boulevards and rounded edges. Shimmering blue-green pools reflect marble ellipses and sparse iron statues, and roars endlessly curling inward, like the loops of a crosier. It is JK's carefully cultivated, unwrinkled set of 20th century progress. Lucio Costa and Oscar Niemeyer designed the new Brazilian capital as a plane in flight, with the nation's bureaucrats living in its wings and working in its fuselage. It's meant for traversal by car rather than by foot, and its strict neat zones offer little nightlife. But does Brasilia, as Kubitschek intended, represent Brazil? No, not nearly. Nor is it equitable to say that Brazil should conform to its vaporous standards. But Brasilia is a dream made in real and clean lines, and from one dream fulfilled, others follow easier. There we go. Next, I think we have Minas Gerais, which we'll go ahead and read. I think one of the bigger states. Near the end of the 19th century, the capital of Minas Gerais physically outgrew the valley in which it was located. The state government turned to a large but sparsely populated valley located in the center of the state and with a temperate climate, and committed to building a city larger than any other in Minas Gerais, where previously there were only cattle. Belo Horizonte was inaugurated as the new capital in 1897. Within 30 years of its founding, it grew into Brazil's first true inland metropolis, where once the hinterlands of Minas Gerais simply exported its raw materials to the coast, now they supply thriving steel mills and cement plants in the capital. Such rapid growth necessitated sweeping infrastructure expansion under Mayor JK in the 40s. Thus began the career of a man who would one day be president and apply his approach to urban development nationwide. Belo Horizonte. Horizonte? Enjoys a diversifying growing economy, continues to grow as fast as ever. Seems almost certain likely destined to surpass Recife as Brazil's third largest city in the near future. Well, there we go. And with that, my friends, let's get this timer going. Explore Brazil plenty. It's time to get moving on. Very, very nice. We can go ahead. Could fund legacy programs. We could do overtime pay. That would be a big one. We don't want to do it on healthcare, though. That's coming along quite well. That's going to take 5.5. This is going to take 3.1. And we can only put so much to it. Let's go ahead and put that down on it. Now it's going to be done in... Hello? Did I make an oopsie daisy? Did that go to the, it might have gone to the healthcare program instead. That wouldn't be great. Maybe I should have unpaused it and then done it. So be it. In the meanwhile, do you want to get working on that? Let's start negotiating for the Treaty of Itapu. Wonderful. Our offer of friendship has been graciously accepted by the Paraguayan government. Now all we need to do is negotiate the details, with Adhemar taking a lead role in guaranteeing the treaty is fair for Brazil. So we can finally start working on getting more energy to our people of our great country. There goes Angola. Not quite sure what that's going to mean for Colombia in the war. What I do know is that we have had a quite unfortunate turn in the Cold War. I mean, then again, though, we have nukes and Argentina does not. I don't know if I'd call that narrowly behind. Adhemar was at his desk before him was a new report compiled by Dacuna. It was a thick and heavy document compiling months of work by the foreign minister. Dacuna, what is it this time? It's about Paraguay, sir. Look on Adhemar's face went from born to excitement in the blink of an eye. Ever since the beginning of his presidency, he always hoped to fix relations with the Paraguayan people, especially before the Argentinians. The bull started scouring through the folder, reading every piece of information that he hoped would be relevant for the process. His eyes were gleaming with hope. Do you think we can save Itaipu? But his hope suddenly turned to dread. Costa, what about Para? Dacuna chuckled. He was prepared for a trip down south, even if negotiating with the recently formed Paraguayan government would surely be difficult. After all, he had a card up his sleeve. He would entice the nation's officials with promises of aid, something the unstable Paraguayan government deeply needed. Dacuna took a sip of coffee. Very probably, but we must act before Argentina. You see, Adhemar, they've been making swift progress on their relations with Asuncion. Adhemar grabbed a pen and a piece of paper. As soon as he heard that message, he was ready to write that letter and change South America. He was ready to talk with Paraguay. Roads and bridges built with paper. So it looks like we're negotiating right now, so we can move on to elsewhere, like perhaps the school expansion program. One of the main driving forces One of the main driving forces to the literacy crisis is a severe lack of schools in rural areas and the favelas. Some of these places, up to 3/4 of the population, are completely unable to read and write, let alone have access to the appropriate services to learn. We need to alleviate this issue immediately by pursuing the construction of these schools all over Brazil's poor areas, to get these people access to education. After all, it has always been our true goal. Not Laos. We just had our industrial expertise upped in the last video. Vasco, right on time. Boom Adhemar's voice as the foreign minister hastened over towards the conference chamber. So, Paraguay, get on with it. So, he studied the contents of his dossier one more time, taking a deep breath to prepare himself for the very possible onslaught from the other end of the table. The Paraguayan Democratic parties have sent a letter to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs indicating they want to be present in the upcoming discussion with the Brazilian government surrounding deeper economic and political cooperation following the restoration of national order. Alright. So what do you think this means for us? Takuna looked like he almost dropped a wine glass. Well, Paraguay is obviously an important partner for us, and they are obviously strapped for cash right now. It's imperative that we step in as the only nation that can and cover the gash left by the full uprising. Otherwise, we'll be left down the cold and we'll be left with the tail between our legs. No, Vasco, that's not what that means. Takuna now looked like he had shattered something. It means they are in need, so we are in control. Therefore, we need to make sure the Paraguayans don't forget the favor done for them and get behind us. Following this, the foreign minister took one more look at the president, picked up his file, and marched out the door without a word. When he was at the door, Adhemar was already taking notes. Don't let your head float off into the clouds, Vasco. We need you down here. As South America faces an earthquake, Brasilia is the first responder. Here's Manchuria. I thought Manchuria's content was going to be coming out soon. I might be mistaken on that. Yeah, I mean, evidently I am. I thought Guangdong was coming shortly after Guangdong, but yeah. Anyway, compared to the ancient buildings that flanked the area, it looked like the new school was dropped here in rural Sao Paulo by accident. It was much too modern, much too nice. The warm pastel tones of its walls reminded the children of expensive plates their parents refused to take out. The design was so inviting, in fact, that most of them actually stuck around during the entire open house instead of rushing straight for the playground. In the meantime, the parents marveled at the new rooms, the new desks, and the new shelves. Most of them had spent their entire lives with hand-me-downs, so to them, this was the next generation being spoiled. But then again, there was no skimping when it came to their children's futures. A few of the fathers even stared out the wide windows to watch the boys kicking the ball around the fresh football field with a touch of envy. Both the parents and the children seemed pleased, so it was time for the priest's blessing. Dressed in robes, he moved from classroom to classroom, a small crowd of curious children trailing behind him like a procession. In his hands, he carried an aspersorium, a vessel of holy water, and a small aspergillum, with which he sprinkled droplets upon the walls. A framed portrait of Adhemar hung in each classroom, as was the tradition. The children really didn't know who the man was, but judging by the way their parents talked about him, the guy must have been important. Now thin strands of holy water left silver streaks along his smiling mug. You're welcomed. I think let's go ahead and aid Nordeste first. The Nordeste region, where it all began more than 400 years ago in 1950. It was here when the Portuguese landed in Brazil, and it is here where the foundation of the Brazilian nation was laid down in the old capital of Salvador. And now, it's mostly an agricultural region. Its most powerful position overtaken by the modern prestige of Brasilia. We'll need to restore the glory of the Nordeste, once held so proudly. Thus, we should expand the education program here next, with the construction of schools and training of teachers all across the region. While it may not be as resource-rich as the Amazonas, as the highest number of states, and thus the highest number of senators to be elected, which can make it quite important to us. After all, how is a man who cannot read or write supposed to lead and vote? Fair enough. Let's take a look at this bill. While education for in all states, the extent of it is limited. Not all children have the privilege of going to school. It's a major factor holding Brazil back from future economic growth. Proposed on behalf of the president, the bill will seek through massive investment to ensure all children have access to schools, whether they live in cities or the countryside. Ensure reflection reflects the patriotic values of Brazil. So we're lacking PSP support, but we could get the PTB over to help us out. That does remind me, the second Russian, well, I forget the name of the mod now. The second West Russian War mod just dropped an update with Omsk getting content, so the Great Trial can commence. I'm probably going to be doing that next out of any TNO stuff. Ooh. The Paraguayan delegation sat down once more to deal with the largest and most ambitious part of the deal, pros deal, the infrastructure section. Diplomats and negotiators spitballed ideas and figures of what was shaping to be the largest dam of its kind in the world. Excitement grew in each speaker's voices that began to unveil the new era that could be on both sides of the border. "Thank you, Your Excellency," said Leitão da Cunha, smiling. "I'd like to clarify that currently the Brazilian position strongly advocates a plurality stake of the Brazilian contracts ownership in both the dam as well as connecting road projects and bridges, so as to speed up the building time and deliver more quickly and efficiently the output and turnover both parties desire." The foreign minister looked up from his notes after finishing the proposal to a row of uncomfortable diplomats. Their expressions deflated. Even the minister's team seemed to stiffen. "That sounds like a takeover." The whole room, stunned into silence, darted their attention to an older Paraguayan further down the table. "Talk of efficiency, but how do we know our dams, our roads, and our bridges won't slide into your cronies' pockets? Paraguayan infrastructure has been and will continue to be Paraguayan." For a couple of eager knots inside the room, the demands were made clear. This monologue bothered the minister, not only because he was identified as as if he was Adhemar's personal scheme artist, but also its audacity. "We're just going to sit on the deals if they weren't pushed, he thought. No, he was going to set the record straight. No oligarchs, no monopolies. They had to make this work. If you'll all excuse me, the Brazilian representation must take its recess." We can meet halfway. Alfonso, what do you say we split it 50-50? I think 50-50 would be fair, right? Chat, don't you guys agree? Oh god, yeah, our economy is, we have some freeze. I don't think we've been building anything in the meanwhile. Holy shit. I really don't understand the economic system, I'm realizing. Could use a hospital here. Let's do some schools as well in the meanwhile. Let's work with Edna's ideas. Even though it would be more preferable for us to go with an all-PSP program with our education reform, it cannot be denied that the VP Lot is more experienced in the education sector than us. Edna knows more about the needs of teachers than anyone else in the cabinet, so it would be foolish not to seek her out for advice and to ensure our program will succeed. We can also use this opportunity to limit the amount of funds coming out of the Treasury to guarantee a smooth passing of the bill that will, with the labor support that this will surely shore up. Theoretically, Brazilians and Paraguayan delegates were meant to be meeting to discuss details regarding ownership. In reality, it was more of a battle, where each nation's delegation huddled among themselves before sending out a messenger to deliver their terms. What felt like an turn, the men were sent out in no man's land as instruments of intent. To rate for the needs of Brazil to resolve these unfortunately protracted negotiations, we believe at first to receive adequate compensation for our share of the investments contributed thus far will be necessary for Brazilian companies to own the dam and the infrastructure itself. Disgusted look on the opposition's faces spoiled the failure of this foreign language. Very well, I will reiterate our response to this. It is unacceptable. Only his unbreaking speech hinted at something fruitful. However, we have devised a counter-proposal. Brazil and Paraguay will act as co-owners of dam, while a Brazilian contractor will be permitted to oversee it. Brazilian spokesperson nodded and returned to his camp. Outrageous! Who do they think they are? They should be groveling at our boots for even deigning to bless them with this venture. The first response was met with a chorus of fists banging upon the conference table. Are you mad? They aren't our colony and they can go elsewhere. I don't like these terms either, but acting like a bull here will leave us with no dam and only pile shit to return home to. Murmurs and hushed approvals welcomed the statement. The other places to go, you said it yourself. Let's just go with their terms, and what we have here will make up for whatever the cost of those terms entail. Glares met this statement before a wise old voice silenced the debate with a deciding opinion. Play hardball. They have no one else, and they know it. I don't quite know what's going on with the economy, I'll be real. Against every measure of what the previous discourse should have been implied, the moon in Planalto was a welcomingly pleasant, and Barbaros treated Nalant with a courtesy least expected from him and most appreciated by her. The two of them sat opposite each other, Edna guiding him through some of the BTB's programs for education reforms for teachers. She'd hoped to maybe bridge the gap that had formed in recent years, one that had largely been spearheaded by the gentleman sitting in front of her. Even now, it still read like a paradox to have DeBarros suddenly be so cooperative. Laborers rarely looked on without scorn from political machinists like the progressistas, something that made the recent overtures of DeBarros reassuring. His position on addressing the needs of teachers might actually come from a place of humanity, much like her own. DeBarros' words brought her back from her analysis, placing a gentle hand on her desk as she leaned forward. And you can assure me that your party is content with sharing this with my office? That this can pass the legislator? You can give me credit, Adhemar. It might seem like hearsay to see me here, but I was elected for a purpose. She put too much emphasis on her words than she intended, a hint of playful mirth hiding behind her eyes. As if to continue and say, and you were not. Whether the mostly unintended jab registered with DeBarros, Edna couldn't say. He sat, leaning into his finger again, pressing against his temple. Then slanting sneer on his lips again. Don't get prickly on me now, old man. Forgive me, Presidente. Edna awkwardly adjusted her glasses and nodded curly. You have my utmost assurance on this matter. It will pass with hardly any dissension whatsoever, I promise. Edmar brought his fingers to his lips, raising his eyebrows, and sneer softened to a short, soft grin. Edna's smile was less forced than before. There we go. Let's maintain high standards. The teachers of Brazil work a thankless and frustrating job in educating the youth of our great country. As such, it is of paramount importance that we maintain our standards by taking various measures to make their jobs more rewarding. We'll codify their rights into law, like minimum wage, student relations, career advancements, and more. In addition, we will organize training courses in order to make sure they are up to the standards as well as to expand their capabilities upon Edna's advice. Evidently, this can all come when the teachers' union changed their tune from PTB to PSP. Until they're singing about our own Mr. Uba Masfaz, they are not getting a single cent from this program. The midday sun beat down mercilessly on the makeshift clearing. Eduardo, an SBI officer, wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, his gaze sweeping over his scene. Adhemar's administration, for all its flaws, at least put some resources into indigenous support, even if they came with strings attached. He watched as Yanomami, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and suspicion, received packages of medicine and food. These were the same people who, just a few months ago, had been stricken with illness and starvation. Now some semblance of health was returning to their faces, but there was a simmering undercurrent of resentment barely concealed, that Eduardo noticed each and every time. The real source of the unease was happening over the newly constructed schoolhouse. The building's simple structure of brick stood as a stark symbol of the new policies implemented under Adhemar. The children of her tribe, some as young as 5, were being shepherded into its doors by white teachers. These children, some of whom still clung to their parents' hand, were entering a world far removed from their own. The school's curriculum was a mix of basic reading and arithmetic, all taught in Portuguese, but other aspects of troubled their watermouths. Lessons were saturated with Catholic teachings, emphasizing Christian morality and faith over the Yanomami spiritual beliefs. Brazilian values were hampered into young minds, presenting a world where their own culture and traditions were, at best, archaic and at worst, shameful. The explicit goal was to assimilate these children to mold them into loyal Brazilian citizens. So Eduardo watched the children march into their classes, the once vibrant culture and identity of indigenous people slowly fading. He wondered what kind of a nation they were building and at what cost. Is it really progress at the cost? Is there culture? In a saloon in Acre, the radio was blaring as a lumberjack sipped a glass of moonshine. When 7 p.m. rolled about, the radio changed from the music to the news, announcing the start of A Voz do Brasil. He took another sip of his drink. It burned through him. The announcer cleared his throat and spoke over the radio about the successful referendum, the integration of China into the United States of Brazil. It's always strange to hear the U.S. followed by anything but America. The report mentioned a little bit about some protest over and whatever it was our soldiers had conquered. He stumbled out of the bar, and the radio spoke to the glazed-eyed patrons. He ran home and shouted the good news to his brother. He babbled about the new land Brazil had conquered in Africa, before wondering if they had jungles in Guyana or Guinea or whatever it was. Maybe his salary would go down with all the timber flooding in the market from this new land. All this change, the country is getting bigger. Too much for one night. I need to lie down. Oh, there we go. The United States of Brazil has officially announced the creation of its newest state, christening the state of Cayena. Comprised of the territory of the former Brazilian protectorate Guiana Cayenne, the new state has been integrated with the blessing of the OAS and the OFN. Citing the support of lawmakers from the National Congress, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs released a statement stating that the annexation represents the coming together of the Brazilian nation and the democratic wishes of the Brazilian people to their sovereignty. At last. So I wonder, does that mean now... Oh, we can't do anything quite there yet. It doesn't look like that's going to pop up there. As Dakuna got out of his car, he was already mentally preparing himself for the other half of why he was at Asunción at all. It's time to agree to a trade deal with Paraguay. Marching down the corridors of the boardroom, he kept up his guard with polite smiles at counterparts, hiding whatever anguish or pride he had received because of them. But today he was under no alternate impression of his task. It would be at least 3-0 to Brazilian trade. Anything less would be humiliation. All clear in Paraguay's civilian economy has been greatly disrupted by the recent insurgency. Where purchasing power is falling sharply, domestic industries are left damaged or destroyed, and the consumer goods deficit is in free fall. With this in mind, the Brazilian government is prepared to subsidize the host's economy with generous boosts to soybean industry financing. One glance to the other side of the room saw virtually the whole Paraguayan delegation's face glowing. However, to ensure this deal is practicable and stable, we'll ask for halving of any existing tariffs on Brazilian goods, either manufactured or agricultural, as well as the Brazilian market being the primary trade partner as opposed to the, say, Argentinian one. One of the Brazilian advisors let out a smirk, and the minister feigned to ignore him. We believe, given the weakness of the current Paraguayan economy, this would be strongly within the country's interest to do so in any case. With that simple declaration, the daily negotiations routine of recess and reconsideration, and the Paraguayans were out of the room as fast as we came in. Were the terms too harsh? It was time to decide. So, I think we're deciding from the Paraguayan perspective. I just came to realize. We need the trade. Allow them reduced tariffs and protectionist freedoms. Some mechanization over here. Hi, Melinda. I hate to bother you, but it's about my kid. It's just... Francisca found herself in a strange routine. One of her girls had a fever far too high and persistent via the flu. No cough, but eating became a painful chore. Tonsils oozed unsettling pus. Good morning, Mr. Mart. Oh, did you hear me from the other door? Oh, thank you so much. You're so generous. It was Adhemar's Brazil, though. Perhaps it was time to test those renowned healthcare reforms, take a few loans from the bank of next door, and go somewhere she'd always want to visit. Mr. Lu... I'm so sorry. No, I mean, I know she's caused trouble, and I'm so sorry, but please could you... Oh, you're a lifesaver. Thank you. Counting the crumpled crucero, she now had the means to shake her daughter awake, stop by a Kaija to withdraw the rest of her savings, and squeeze into the hospital dos servidores. Clutching her fragile bundle of a doll, we navigated through a sea of bodies, pressing into the hospital's bronze facade. People packed the reception area like a conference of illnesses from every walk of life. However, Francisca did her research. She joined the shorter queue of domestic helpers with well-dressed kids, and after a tense wait, she slid a thick wad of cash across the counter. Receptionist nod was settled. With that, she was in. So it took her half an hour to navigate the halls, 15 minutes to consult the general practitioner in an office where the ceiling threatened to give way to whatever heavy apparatus was on the next floor, another 45 to line up at the on-site pharmacy for the penicillin BK. Stepping out of the forecourt, she held the bottle of tablets, admiring like a souvenir. All that money for some pills and a slip that said strep throat and chicken scratch. Well, she didn't have to leave it a chance anymore, right? If she saved enough, maybe they could come back next year. Many elements of TV Globo owe that and a lot to tests. The host tacky tie, the host's irritating voice, the spotlights which made you feel like a criminal, and the host. Overall, the audience was another element which he didn't reserve hatred towards, but fear. One inadequately answered question could land on the front page of Ultimate Hour. You there in the wet sweater, can we get your question? Do you think you only gotta be vice president because you're the daughter of a previous president? Edna Lot restrained herself with a polite smile before responding. Despite popular opinion, military backing can only get you so far in this country. Sporadic laughs erupted from the audience. No, I was elected first by the people of Guanabar to represent them. And now as a counterweight to the good intentions of our Paulista president. And from the front row gave her a nod. Do you think your party would have preferred Goblout or Brazola to become vice president instead of you? The PTB has many talented individuals behind it. I just so happen to be their candidate for this position. And I know I have the full support of my party. Another nod. Shouldn't you be at home raising your kids? My children have already been raised. I should be asking you why you aren't at the bar knocking down bottles of beer. Howls came from the audience, with her handler joining in. The critics have been silenced as she fielded more supportive questions. An audience watched at home watched with respect. Try as they might, Edna's star continued to ascend. Okay, let's get some raises for teachers. Inflation hurts all sectors of our great society, teachers especially. We need to raise their wages to adapt to the change in prices, as well as raising their societal standing based on their merits and experience. This will encourage them to continue teaching amidst our economic situation and incentivize others to start educating our youth too. Where will the money come from? We needn't worry about it. We'll find a way if things go awry. Still not quite sure what I want to do. Oh. Within hours, the flustered power glands were insisting, back in the meeting, with their meeting coordinator insisting they have the trade issue dealt with today, Vasco found a chin to the fine Paraguayan armor. They needed the steel. In fact, they probably needed it this week. They'd probably do everything they can to salvage the funds and buy back some national confidence. Even then, they still put up a fight in official discussions. You can see for the amount specified in this mid-proposal, there's not enough here to convince the delegation of his trade deal's merits, especially given how much his opportunity costs. You need to consider your position more carefully, Your Excellency. To be frank, this economic problem is a Brazil-sized hole. It's too big for Paraguay to fill itself, and its other neighbors and partners will not commit to or want to take the necessary steps to do that. However, the fact that we, as your largest neighbor, are the first country to come to Asunción at all must prove that we mean business, and that we're able to do what is necessary. The speaker on the other end was stunned to silence. That is not an assumption for yourself to make, Mr. Minister of Foreign Affairs. If he didn't know any better, Vasco would have laughed in his face. If you are so sure, we are prepared to walk away. He let the phrase sit a while, accumulate some power, let the paper shuffle, eyes flit across the room. Tick. Tick. Boom. Well, said the speaker with an embarrassed smile. We wouldn't want it to get to that, would we? Vasco Leitão da Cunha savored the memory of that smile for weeks to come, framing it on the wall of his mind as if it were a World Cup winning goal. When he thought about it that night, with feet on desk and cigarette in hand, there were two ways about it. If they were playing a game, he had scored a hat trick. So we still have executive power contested. He couldn't help but blurt out, wiping his eyes. He took a second to look at the paycheck in his hands. It was real, but it was paying a school teacher like him way more than he was used to. Actually, with this amount of pay, I could have a shot at living. Diverting his eyes off the unreal paycheck, they lingered on the frugal furniture of the small structure he called home. How they could be replaced with something that could brighten up his home and make his grin a few centimeters bigger. Maybe he could afford better appliances. Forget a single nice plate, a small treat. He could buy a whole set. Diving back into the paycheck, pieces clinked into place. This is what the principal meant by Adhemar arranging raises. I know what to buy now. A drink. His mind wandered to more fanciful bottles of alcohol that he could only win as behind a pane of glass. The teacher snapped back into reality, recalling the cost of those luxuries. Though a cheap bottle wouldn't hurt. He thought longer, coming up with a second item, a book. After classes ended for the week, he would buy the alcohol and a new book and just lose a while. A swill sounded extremely nice. He would remember to toast to Adhemar for that. Getting the chance to read something new as well? That's all you need to make him smile. Now let's go ahead and push it through the Senado. The bill clearly defined now comes as a true Herculean task, actually pushing the bill through Congress. We'll have to work double time on pulling favors and sending out bribes in order to make sure that Adhemar's bills pass at all cost. Its approval will be a significant boost to our popularity, and above all, prove that the man who steals from the people also delivers the most for them. How are we doing here? We're doing pretty well. We'll rally a couple people, just in the case that something happens to decrease support. I don't think it would, but I also don't know the mechanics of it all. Got pretty solid margins, though. I think we're in the clear. Oh, yeah, we have the political power. Vasco da Cunha stared at his cup of coffee, and his tired face reflected in the coffee that stared back at him. How long had he been tangled up in these negotiations? It was easy to lose track of time when arguing with the walls in this room without any opening to the outside world. He would be damned if he put it all to lose after getting this far. But checking into over mediocre treat was not an option either, considering his reputation and his boss's tempering were both hanging in the balance as well. Gentlemen, I thank you for your cooperation pushing forward with this project in the common interest of our countries. Now, there's only one matter left pending, the distribution of electrical energy. Murmurs emanated from the Paraguayan delegation as their heads tilted forward and their gazes were fixed towards da Cunha. Takuna assumed it was more of a show of interest than an attempt to intimidate him as he cleared his throat. In order to achieve a fair distribution of the energy produced by the Itapu Dam, the power output must be divided accordingly, according to the gross contribution made by each country. Therefore, an approximate value of 70% of the energy must be directed to the United States or Brazil. Preposterous! What would be left for us them crumbs? The house of our people are in much greater need for energy than yours. To accept a deal, then you're very mistaken. So the meeting went on for minutes that passed like hours. After many arguments thrown back and forth, both sides finally reached an agreement to take a break from decision-making. As the Parliament representation left orderly and wordlessly as he felt the weight of the glares and the success of a treaty returning all at once to him, Takuna swallowed his cold coffee and called his nearest advisor. Tell the president we are agreeing to equal access. Oh, there we go. Benefit electoral chances. Good work. Not the greatest story never told. Nice. Alright, let's go ahead and get working on the right path. Data from our polling sources across Brazil have been collected, and the verdict is in. Our literacy programs have been a total victory for President Adhemar and the PSP. A great percentage of our nation's youth are enrolled in primary, secondary, and tertiary education than ever before, ensuring that our children will be the brightest and most talented of all previous generations, guaranteeing an economic boom in a matter of years. Second, the literacy rates are dropping in record time for both children and adults, ensuring that they can take jobs in more areas than just rural farm labor. Most respondents credit Adhemar and the PSP for their successes, and we can only assume that they will reward the PSP in the coming elections. May the good times never end. And there we go. Ooh. That's going to be very interesting. Adhemar sat back in his chair. The radio was going over the vote as the Senate mulled over his education bill. This was it, as the sum of his efforts all to crystallize in just another minute. As it went down party by party, name by name, he started to see things inevitably turn to its favor. He never doubted himself. Not for a second. As final tally was announced, he smiled. He had prepared a bottle of brandy for this very occasion. He relished pouring himself a glass, taking a sip. This was a taste for victory, after all. You could see the headlines. A victory for Brazil's children. Yes, it was a victory not for the children of Brazil, but for the children of Brazil, but there would be no victory to speak of if not for him. Still, with the passage of the bill, he could leverage himself as an educational reformer. Win points with the families, win business owners. In 30 years' time, when they write about the history of Brazil, this will be a turning point. His name, Adhemar the President, who landed illiteracy. He could see the world coming together in his mind. Still, the legacy was not yet sealed. He saw another history book, this time mentioning that while his initial bill did pass, ultimately Adhemar's efforts fell short. The action of opposition behind the scenes, his bill was undermined. Subsequent bills tabled and relegated before being forgotten. You could see the conclusion swirling together in a whirlpool of dizzying failure. He would not be the one subjugated to such a disgrace. As he finished his drink, he resolved to avoid such an outcome. It was the media, ever his tool to be used. He would row himself out of any potentially treacherous waters and towards the legacy that he so deserved. Just gonna have one more brandy. For successful passing of the education bill was a foregone conclusion that a celebration of some kind would need to be held, and so it was. An invitation-only dinner hosted by President Adhemar and attended by Edna Lott and the most elite and dedicated of his supporters. It was a grand affair, and throughout it, the two of them worked the room, shaking hands, conveying thanks, dispensing patronage, and executing all the forms of political process to which they were well accustomed. It was a masterful show. An example of how the bill had been passed, and proof to those in attendance that they had chosen the right faction to back. And the dinner wound down, however, to both Adhemar and Edna propose a general toast, to many things and to polite applause. To the success of this bill, yes, which could not, of course, have passed without the generous support of those present. No doubt, glorious future of Brazilian education, which it promised. And finally, develop of each other, which was received with raucous applause. Priorities clearly established. There we go. I really do not like. Let's start now. Downtime. As foreign minister in a foreign land, Vasco learned he ought to savor it. He had been pacing around Asuncion all day, every day since he'd gotten there. So for the moment, he reclined in his hotel bed, coffee cup in hand, maybe reading a crap. It's Adhemar again. Let it ring. Don't get pissy. Don't argue. Just answer the phone. Yes, Mr. President. What would seem to be the issue? The issue? Vasco, you know the issue. You're not on holiday, for Christ's sakes. I've just been mulling it over, and this trade deal seems excessive. Adhemar pointing out excess. The foreign minister thought he'd never see the day. We need to soften the tone. Sir, with all due respect, we made the situation to the Paraguayans very clear. We're our larger partner. We will likely build most of the dam ourselves. Equal access to the dam's energy output. Shared administrative authority on the dam. We meet in the middle. Those are the terms. Look, I've seen Paraguay. I saw the war before my eyes. I know what it takes. Don't give me any more last-minute shocks. Just get it done. Thank you. Vasco sat down at his folder-laden desk, and after flipping one or two across his room, crossing out his old notes, and perhaps letting out a groan, he got back to work immediately after. Paraguayans agreed to a new clause of retreat on the President's last-minute terms. Their delegation positively gloated the announcement of compromise proposals, and the power of the proposed dam will be split evenly across the countries. Walking out of the meeting, Vasco Leto Dacuna's smile was more modest. What he was actually thinking about was how big an opportunity they had missed and how much he just wanted to go home. Afonso, how many days of this have we got left? We'll see, won't we? Polite as always, Adhemar's mentee, Getulio Vargas Filho, son of the man called the Father of the Poor, came walking into the presidential office of the Planalto Proposal Mine. Mr. President, your successes in education are something else. With these plans of yours, you've managed to build a new paradigm in Brazilian education that only my father, maybe, have managed to parallel. Adhemar nodded graciously, lapping up the compliments, and gestured at him to continue. But I had an idea. Perhaps it might be possible for us to establish a national institution of innovation and technologies as a suitable finale for this education reform. The President thought about this for a bit, but then shook his head. This I can't do, Junior. I spent too much time on education this term. I need to focus on other things. However, I can't work to organize this in my second term. That was fair, Vargas Filho thought. Fair enough, Adhemar. Could we possibly then invest in chemical research instead? Adhemar shook his head a second time. Vargas Filho hit a wince. No, the budget won't be able to take it. I've already thrown so much money at education, we need to first reap the benefits of that. Chemistry's gonna have to wait. I understand, Mr. President. Have a good day. Vargas Filho intoned, avoiding the urge to grumble. Leaving Planalto to go about his next business, he reflected that at least Adhemar's inaction in these areas would give him room to maneuver these areas when he became president. The plan can wait. I just hope it doesn't wait forever. Damn, poor guy. Meanwhile, let's do a public declaration. The time has come. Hours of slaving away, negotiations with foreign powers, managing logistics, and draining to their very limit has produced not only one but two nuclear warheads. The PSP has always been a party of dreamers. Today those dreams have become a reality. We hold a power so great that it is impossible to ignore. So why bother keeping it hidden? We have the testing sites in Para. The world's eyes are on us. Brazil will today test one of her nukes, christening herself as a fifth global power. May our enemies tremble in fear, and our allies thank their lucky stars that we are on their side, for we have mastered the power of the atom. And all that's left to do is push up your sunglasses and watch the fireworks. Look at that. Looks like all's well's ended well enough for the OFN mandates. Mingle end up doing. Oh, look at that. They're in, Vasco said in a tired voice. He was exhausted from the extensive negotiations with the new Paraguayan regime, but it finally paid off. We've talked with officials this morning, and they accepted the deal. It was a major one for Brazil, finally being able to control the resource-rich Paraguayan soil. Vasco! When I first put you in my cabinet, I didn't know if you'd actually be a good foreign minister, but today, you prove you're capable of great things. When you're back here in Brasilia, I will congratulate you in a better way than by phone. We do chat a bit over other topics involving the future of Paraguay. Now they would use a new land. I believe that's all we have to talk about for now. Adhemar said with a smile on his face, congratulations on winning over the Paraguayans. Vasco sighed in relief. It was finally over. He could go back to his nation as a hero and have his much-deserved break. The minister turned off the lights and lied on his bed, but he knew that Adhemar would just give the land to his friends. But he wasn't worried about that at this point. He just wanted rest. Good night, Mr. Dacuna. There were successful negotiations with the Paraguayan government. They left a rival spear. It was a major victory in the South American Cold War. Look at that. Were they even in the spear to begin with? If not, they are now. Which, yeah, fair enough. I'm not sure if the Dominican Republic's supposed to be aligned with Iberia at this point. I'll be real. Oh, and there they go. Back to dangerous. But what does it matter? It does not. Let's go ahead and get working on the atomic age, or Prometheus. They said it couldn't be done. An empty promise. They called it populistic nonsense with no bearing in reality. They said they doubted us and refused to place their trust in us. Well, they were wrong, and look at us now. Brazil, a nuclear power. Who would have thought it a few years ago? Adhemar did. Once he, again, the man who steals and delivers, has lived Brazil one of its greatest gifts she could possibly receive. He'll be forever remembered as the father of our nation's nuclear power. The Brazilian Prometheus, if you will. Some minor advisors like Admiral Alvaro may have helped him along the way. See another example of Adhemar's benevolently leading Brazil in the future. We're all at the red carpet. It's time to celebrate. Much was expected upon the invitation for Adhemar's statement. Brought generals and journalists, dignitaries and diplomats to the clearing in the heart of the Amazon. Hardly of a city stroll, some of them imagined their job to be. Argentinian and Chilean officials muttered in furtive and hushed tones of Spanish, and such an invitation delivered on such short notice to such an obscure location heightened their worries of the unthinkable. Brazil had the nuke. Adhemar stood in front of the panel, back straight, his face military in disposition, and a light shone on his face to bring the tones to whisper. What is the larger part of power, fear, or respect? We would all want to say the latter. But in the world that our native Brazil inhabits, respect is undervalued. Unfortunately, it is fear. Cold, uncaring fear which reigns supreme. The armed forces representatives remained focused on the president, while the attention of diplomats darted across the plain, some as puzzled as they were at the beginning. When Brazil stands its ground, it ensures peace. When it flexes its might, it ensures order. Judging by the fact we are still here, I would say that strategy has worked out pretty well. Now, once our distinguished researchers over here have made your acquaintance with this lesson, remember this. In this world of chaos, this is our country's only way. Adhemar nodded at a scientist at the desk, who gave the go-ahead and began to count from 60. Despite his unmoving face, which he then covered with a pair of prescribed sunglasses handed to him by an aide. 30 seconds. He, too, turned his face in apprehension, worrying he just made a rhetorical gambit and lucked out. 15 seconds. Everyone now was geared up with faces, arms, and legs covered up for the fallout. 3, 2, 1. And up springs the cloud. A mythically sized mushroom erupts from above the trees. Blood red, then holy white washes across the sky. The shock wave thunders over the panel of odd onlookers. Brazil's entered a new era and will never step back. Do we get a news thing about that? I don't know if we do, but we now have a positive legacy. Look at that. We could take away from that, steal from it, to get a measly $1 million, which I don't think would work. Well, my friends, is Amazonas really already heavily developed? Go figure. Oh, can we add more to the... That is not more. That is fake news, what it just did to me. Well, I'm going to leave things there, but thanks always for watching, gang. Like, dislike, didn't. Leaving comments, feedback down in the comment section below. You don't know the deal by now. Let's expand some logging. I'm going to leave things there. Thanks always for watching, gang. My name has been Mr. Dogwood53. I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye now.